everybody. You're tuning in to Mad About It. I'm your host, Becky with the good hair. That's right, it's me. Today, I am going to talk about the trans kids stuff. That's kind of just, it's generic. It's also targeted towards trans adults, I should say, but the issue that people are really rallied about, the issue that people are really upset about are stuff with trans kids. That's what really bothers people. And you can divide it into two main categories. But let's start with the first thing, which is just, all of these anti-trans bills seem to be a response to the Republicans losing the presidency. They lost the election and they're retaliating in whatever way they can think of, and for whatever reason they've decided that trans people are their issue right now. And the Republican Party seems to be trying to rally its troops around transphobia. Like, that's their come to Jesus topic, is trans people and how much they shouldn't be allowed to exist. So it's kind of depressing, but the two main subcategories of that main category are trans bills, anti-trans sports bills, and anti-trans youth bills. And there's some crossover, which is why they're both under the main category of just anti-trans legislature. But in my opinion, the trans youth bills are the most alarming and the most egregious offenses of our civil rights. The trans youth bills are trying to ban hormone therapies and medical trans intervention on trans youth. And this is something that, I've thought about this a lot, and, I'm not the only trans person in the world, but this is my podcast, so I will give my perspective. And I think that, I do wish that I had been trans as a kid. I do wish that. And in the past, some episodes, I say some things that I'm angry, I'm upset. I say some shit that I don't always mean. It doesn't necessarily mean that isn't true to how I feel in the moment. I always say, what is true to how I feel in the moment, but it's not always really, everybody is allowed the opportunity to evolve and change. And initially, when I was starting to transition, the idea of having top surgery or the idea of starting hormones and being transgender as a youth sounded like it might be more trouble than it's worth. And now that I'm, a full-grown adult person with some perspective, and also with some trans friends who started, I have trans friends who started transitioning when they were 15, 16 years old. And those trans people are in every way farther along in life than I am. So it's hard for me, maybe it's just my own personal story, maybe it's just everybody's story is different. There are a lot of trans women that swear that transitioning later in life was just the best thing that ever happened to them, because they got to live both full lives. And a lot of times their life before their transition helped them fund their transition. So there's benefits to starting your transition at all stages in life. You don't lose the benefits as you get older, What I'm talking about is the amount of pain and suffering that I experienced not transitioning, I do believe would have been diminished had I transitioned sooner. I really strongly feel that. I think it would have been a lot of trouble, it would have been a lot of stress, I would have had a lot of frustrations, but I already did. I mean, life is hard, life is frustrating, life is a struggle. It's my personal opinion. I do wish that I had transitioned as a youth. So the idea of me sitting here and watching states like Arkansas ban medical treatment for trans youth, it really alarms me, not just in a we're taking a step backwards, this is scary way, but in a sort of, if I happen to be a kid in Arkansas, I'm not sure if I'd be strong enough for that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'd be strong enough for that. It takes a lot of strength. If you're a kid in Arkansas listening to this, I wish you the best. There's all sorts of problems in all the states. It's a lot of the Bible Belt states that are coming up with this stuff. You don't see anti-trans youth bills in Massachusetts very often, and that's another reason why I think there are more people like me than otherwise, because I grew up in a Midwestern conservative place, and I think that's there's just nothing about where you're born or where you grow up is going to indicate whether or not you're transgender. You could grow up in the middle of nowhere with a town of 15 people and still be transgender. There's amazing documentary about that the Hasidic Jewish community transgender man. Isn't that, am I thinking about this correctly? Is it a trans woman or a trans man? I can't remember. I didn't actually see the movie. I was just told about it. I've been told to see the movie. I haven't had time. I apologize. I should just look up what that fucking movie is. But there are trans people who existed in sex-segregated cultures who've never been exposed to the other gender, who still knew that they were transgender. How do you explain that? You can't fucking explain that. You just can't fucking explain that. The only way that you can explain that is by understanding and trusting that trans people know who they are better than you do as an outside observer. It's just a fact. Trans people know who they are. If a trans person tells you who they are, you do not have the right to say, well, I don't know, based on blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And hormonal therapies, medical interventions, those are all personal choices. They're personal choices with personal consequences that you need to be aware of before you make these decisions. But they're personal choices. And it's not your fucking business. And honestly, all these things, it's classic Republican, but all these things remind me of abortion laws, because what they're really doing at the end of the day is limiting safe, controlled access to these health cares. That's what they're doing. They don't seem to understand that if they make medical intervention illegal for trans children, that will not stop trans children from medically transitioning. They also don't seem to understand that if they ban trans kids from sports, that won't stop trans kids from competing. They'll just be forced to compete in the wrong category and either win everything or lose everything or just exist. They just exist. I really think people, this is something that I've talked to cis people about a lot, and they do not believe this. But there is really just not that big of a difference between the athletic potential of men and women. It's really just not that big of a difference. And I do think they need to do more studies, and they need to figure out a good protocol for, things like the Olympics. But I, honest to God, I've said this before, and I really believe it. I just think that there should be co-ed sports, and that there should be an option for third gender sports. If people really can't, if they can't fucking handle it, we need to at least get our foot in the door with a third option, and then eventually break down the barriers and just not have men's and women's sports, because men's and women's, you are kidding yourself if you think that women's sports are being treated with the same seriousness as men's sports. That the binary structure of sports is already hurting sports. That's just a fact. The binary structure of sports is already hurting sports. So, trans people, like virtually all social issues, we come in here and we expose the existing weaknesses of the system. We're not just, breaking it on our own. It's already broken. So, again, the reason that we have hormonal therapies and the reason that we have medical therapies for trans people the way that we do right now is because of the hard work of countless trans people and doctors and allies who've developed care systems for trans people out of necessity. The Republicans make it sound like trans people are just like, bullying doctors into, writing prescriptions for them or something. It's like, well, now, now the doctors can say, oh, I can't write that script, it's illegal. It's like, most of the doctors I've met, they won't write the script because they're not comfortable doing it. The only ones that'll write you the script are the ones that are comfortable doing it, and the ones that are comfortable doing it have a lot of experience with other trans patients. And they also, it's extremely regulated and restricted. My testosterone dose is extremely controlled by a doctor. If I now was suddenly, if they passed a bill in Kentucky and said Medicaid no longer pays for transgender therapies, I would probably pay out of pocket for my prescription. If they passed a bill and said transgender therapies are now banned, you can't get prescriptions for transgender therapies, I would then be getting black market testosterone. A lot of people used to do black market hormones as just, that's how you do it. That's the only way to do it. A lot of people would go and get the Tijuana two-step because that's the only way to do it. And those situations are worse. Why should we have legal, safe abortion? Because illegal abortion just makes terrible, unsafe abortions. People are still going to have abortions. They're just going to be terrible and unsafe. Why should we make transgender medical youth therapy legal? Because people are still going to do it. They're just going to do it the wrong fucking way. And it's terrible. Also, because being a transgender kid is hard enough. And you don't need to be making a political stance about the existence of trans people in order to try to rally your dead, stupid-ass fucking elephant fucking party. Fuck the Republicans to death. Honestly, I can't believe that they're doing this. I have gay friends who are just kicking back, ordering fucking 50 pounds of everything on Amazon, just relaxed, talking about how much they love Biden's dogs. What the fuck is this shit? I don't give a fuck about dogs, and also I don't give a fuck about fucking Biden until he does something about the atrocities that are happening across the nation. So he needs to do something really quickly. Kamala Harris isn't gonna do something, that's for sure. And I'm just really frustrated, and I think the message is getting really, really convoluted out there. I mean, for my own peace of mind, I needed to have somebody say that, you can't ban transgender hormone therapies, and you can't ban trans people, and you can't get rid of trans people in sports. Trans people are everywhere. They exist. Whether they're out or not, it's not any of your fucking business. And also, if you ban it, they're still gonna do it. They're just gonna die. So I guess, is your goal to kill all the trans people? How is that a legislatable goal? I'm just gonna point it out. These bills are causing so much stress for trans youth. I guarantee you there are consequences of this that we can't count. And the reason that we can't count them is because every trans kid is not out. They might just be another suicide statistic. They might just be a regular suicide statistic. But for whatever reason, nobody seems to care about, like, regular kids killing themselves. They only care about, like, whether or not the kid was, like, a minority on the intersectionality scale and whether or not they killed themselves. Like, we don't know everybody's identities before they fucking die, especially if they're a fucking kid. Like, you can't know. You can't know. If you have a little boy who's getting picked on for being girly, and deep down inside, she is a girl, and she sees all these headlines, I mean, she's certainly not gonna, write a note and say, I am a transgender suicide. That's not what's gonna happen. They die with their secret, people. They die with their secret. When I was a kid, I found music, and it healed my soul, and it gave me an outlet, and it gave me something to do with my hands besides cut myself. And I think that I'm not that unusual. And a lot of people, they find sports. A lot of trans kids find sports. Sports is a safe haven for a lot of kids that are struggling in school. I know a lot, just the same way that band is. A lot of kids where the only thing that they liked about school was sports. It was their whole identity. And a couple of those people are now transgender. Because in sports, weirdly, by making the genders segregated, there's no gender. You're taking the gender out of things by making it all women and all men. It just makes it sport. You just focus on the sport. It's not lady sport or boy sport. You're just playing sport with the people that you're playing with. So it would be miserable to be forced to play soccer with a bunch of girls when you wish you could be playing with all your friends who are all boys. Fortunately for me, music is co-ed. And that's why I keep talking about co-ed sports. Music is co-ed. So I was able to be in sections with all guys and feel comfortable. That's a huge part of the reason why I liked bands so much. I was always around men. I never felt like a lady because guess what? I was one of the guys. Because I'm a fucking guy. Not every trans kid is gonna come out as trans before they become a fucking suicide statistic. It just is how it is, people. And these laws are dangerous. And Biden's silence and ineffective action, I mean, I guess they've made a couple announcements and shit. They need to do something more than just make some announcements. The silence is killing trans kids. And, people are like, oh, J.K. Rowling is killing the trans kids. It's like, this might be a precursor, it might be part of the wave, but you know what's actually killing trans kids right now? The Republicans. The Republicans are actively trying to kill trans people with their bills. And it's really upsetting. And I don't think, when there was a transgender military ban, people were like, oh, that's fucked, like the military is a safe haven. Basically, you could say all the same things I'm saying now about the transgender military ban. But the transgender military ban, at the end of the day, does not affect 100% of people. And these bills in these different states, they're localized to the different states, but it affects 100% of the trans people in all of those states. These bills affect everyone. So, and it doesn't matter if you're an adult trans person. Like, I'm an adult trans person who is not affected by this bill. If these bills pass, they have the potential to even become more restrictive and even become more transphobic. If any amount of transphobic legislature passes, it can cause more transphobic legislature. There's no guarantee. If you had asked me a year ago today, would they be making legislature to ban transgender medical care? I'd say, well, I fucking hope not. It wouldn't seem outrageous, but I would say, oh God, I hope not. Where are we going to be a year from now? A year from now, are we going to be talking about the adult hormonal therapy ban? Are we going to be talking about a transgender marriage ban? Are we going to be talking about fucking you name it? Like, they can come up with anything. And if they gain steam behind this movement, if they already have, if they gain even more steam, something needs to happen. I'm getting close to being really, truly, genuinely panicked. And something needs to happen. And it needs to just shut this shit down. Someone in the Republican Party needs to just grow a single tiny morsel of conscience. They just need a single tiny bit of conscience. These cold-hearted, murderous motherfuckers. I'm sick of the fucking murder party. They're the murder party. I'm over it. They kill the kids in the cages. They're killing the people at the border. They kill everybody with the fucking COVID, and now they're fucking killing trans kids for sport. This is ridiculous. It's just too much. You can't pretend like it's not the biggest problem right now. It's the biggest problem. But I'm working on another playlist, just trying to stay positive, trying to stay afloat. As far as other episodes, I apologize. This is like the worst couple months I've ever had for the podcast. I just not been making content, not been doing you guys right. But, I've had to grow a lot personally over the last year, and I've had a lot of fucked up medical shit. I tell you what, I started antidepressants and I was allergic to them. I went into anaphylactic shock. Can you talk about karma wanting to fuck up the ass? You're like, I'm sad, I need help. And they're like, here you go, anaphylaxis. So, yeah, I'm not trying to make excuses. I've just been really fucking busy and really, really itchy and swollen. So, yeah. And also, I fucked up the website like crazy. I should have fixed it. It should be fixed by now. I'm back on WordPress. It's a long story. It's all fucked. It's so fucked. Alright, well, please take care. Let me know how y'all doing. Send me an email. I do respond. I also respond on the Facebook. Please take care of yourself. Get vaccinated. And eat some vegetables. And whatever you do, don't vote Republican.